All right. Welcome back into another edition of Jake's Takes. I am your host, Jake Masucci, and I am super excited for part 4 of our coaches series. I'm excited to be joined by Coach Justin Sherlock, the head coach at Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I mean, talking about a little bit how we got to know each other. My brother AJ went to Central Michigan, just graduated from Central Michigan, and he was able to join your staff at Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart. And boy, oh boy, these were like 3 of the best years he's ever had being an assistant coach. He's talked about it all the time, me and him just on rides, and how much he's learned about basketball. He comes on the show all the time and talks about NBA, and we're just sports nuts, like complete sports nuts, and we're just talking all ends of basketball. And I'm really blessed that you were able to come on, Coach.
Well, no, I really appreciate you inviting me. You're a student of the game, student of coaching for sure. You know, you come from a great family, and AJ has been a tremendous addition to our staff, our whole school, really. Our players love him. He's a student of the game just like you, and he brings so much to the table. We've been very, very fortunate to have him for 3 years, and we're excited to be able to keep him.
For sure. For sure. Before we get into the coaching and some questions about that, let's get into kind of your playing days, you getting into basketball. So talk to me about, like, was there a moment in your life and when you were younger and you started playing basketball, you were like, man, I just love the sport. Was there a moment that kind of sparked that interest for you?
I would say, I don't know if there's one moment. I was born in 1980, and in 1981, my dad got a head college coaching job, and he was a
Okay.
college basketball player at Cincinnati, and then was a graduate assistant. He knew he wanted to be a coach from the time of, when he was a player. So right away after I was born, I kind of was in a gym, and I watched my dad for over a decade, kind of lead 2 different college programs. And I went to a lot of his practices. I'm sure you can relate to this. I went to a lot of his games. I
Yep.
went to all of his camps. And I started to develop a love for basketball very, very early on. And, I just, like you guys, I followed the NBA players. Back then, Michael Jordan was my guy, and I couldn't miss any of his games. And I just, my passion for the game grew. And my family moved to Michigan in 1993, and I enrolled into a bigger school. And so I was a little bit nervous. I'm not the biggest guy, and I was playing. I was a pretty good player, good skill, but I came from a really small community out east
Okay.
where I grew up. And when I moved to Michigan, it was quite a big change for me culturally. A lot more kids, nobody knew me. And, I kind of had to have a moment, a little self-talk, like, hey, if you really want to pursue this, if you want to be a player, if you want to play here, you can't be nervous. You just got to go out and do it. You got to work. You got to prove to all, your peers as much as the coaches that you can do this. And, it took me a year and a half, 2 years, 7th and 8th grade, but eventually, I started, being recognized as, a pretty good player. And I put forward, all the work that was required. I lived in the gym. I was
Yeah.
very fortunate to play for a very good high school coach at Mount Pleasant High School, Steve Marley, and he had a very good program. And there was a player at Mount Pleasant who was 2 years older than me. He actually played 1 year at Western Michigan. He was a 6'2" guard. His name is Josh Jansen. And Josh's older brother, Ryan, played 4 years at CMU. And he was just,
Okay.
looked just like me as a 5'11" point guard. And Josh was a little taller, didn't have as the college career his older brother did, but Josh was like an older brother to me and took me under his wing. And he had a driver's license. I didn't. He used to pick me up in my house. We'd go work out. He'd bring me into, different gyms and play 5-on-5. He was kind of my mentor. And I can't tell you how lucky I was to have him help me get better, and push me, because he was a very, very good player. So I've just been fortunate, Jake, really my whole life, to be around great situations, great environments, great people, and good basketball.
For sure, for sure. And that kind of leads into you talking about your work ethic and the time you put in the gym. I mean, that kind of leads into you becoming a college player. You know, what kind of like that inspired you to become it, but what kind of made you be like, okay, I know I'm a college player, like I can get this done.
Well, like I said, my dad was a very good high school player, very good college player, and he and I used to play 1-on-1 all the time. And
Yeah.
in defense of my dad, he's 24 years older than me, so at some point, the natural aging of him was going to allow me to be able to beat him. But I say this with all honesty, I could not beat him 1-on-1 until I was a varsity basketball player. He was a very, very good player.
Hmm.
But when I finally did, I'll never forget it. It was kind of the moment that clicked for me. Oh, okay, I can do this. And he never beat me again after that. I mean, I think that game ended up being within 3 or 4 points, but my confidence just grew, and they weren't really close games from there on out. And I was fortunate. My dad was I respected his ability to play. I mean, he was a undersized guy, but played high major basketball. And, you know, even though I knew he was older than me, when I could beat him, I felt like, okay, I can go against anybody, even though he was in his 40s at the time. So I was lucky. I didn't have any friends who had dads that played that kind of level of basketball. And so I just had this confidence that grew in me that, I know he would do fine out here, and I just beat him, so I'm going to be okay. And I didn't let that go to my head too much. I knew I had to still keep working. I hit the weights really hard. I worked on my defense, and I spent a lot of time in the gym. Had they had the gun invented when I was a high school player, I would have wore one of those things out. But I was a little bit predate of the gun. But what a great invention that is. There's really no excuse
Yeah.
anymore for high school athletes. I mean, most of the schools have these machines. You can go into a gym by yourself, and in an hour you can shoot a couple hundred shots. So back when I was playing, I had to rebound my own. So,
Hmm.
but no, I've just been very, very fortunate. And, I had a little bit of a rough start with my college career. I started at Kalamazoo Valley. They signed me at a high school, and I ended up hurting my knee in my very first college game. So I missed half of the season. By the time I got back around, physically healthy enough, it was the end of the year. And I had decided at that point, junior college basketball wasn't my style. I didn't want to stay, but I really didn't have anybody recruiting me because I didn't play half a year. So I'm like, where am I
Yeah.
going to go? And so I took a year off and spent that year, reaching out to coaches, similar to what kids do now, and some guys that have been recruiting me in high school either, had a spot for me and I visited them, or they reached out and kind of networked to coaches they knew looking for a point guard. And so I ended up getting in contact with Rochester University with Coach Garth Pleasant. And I
Hmm.
didn't know anything about Rochester. I didn't know where it was. I had never heard of Garth, but I went and visited, and man, I was blown away. I mean, this is, over 20 years ago now, and I could just tell. I played open gym with their players. I got a tour of the campus. I could just tell that this was a good coach. He had a great program. I mean, they were running motion offense at the time, and and I was familiar with motion offense because my dad had ran it when he was a coach. And the way the guys talked on the floor, communicating screens, communicating cuts, talking on defense, I just knew that he knew what he was doing, and this was going to be a good fit for me. So I went there not knowing, where this place was, and I left there committed. And I said, I want to play for this guy. Um, I also knew he was a very had a good network of coaching friends, and because I wanted to get into coaching myself, I knew he could help me do that, which he ended up doing. So, like I said, I've been very, very blessed, fortunate to have been around the right people at the right time.
For sure. For sure. Talk to me. We talked a lot about like your dad really helping you and you being in the gym. I mean, both of us had that experience of just being in the gym and watching a lot of practices. So, right after your playing career was over, how did you kind of go about getting into the coaching world? Because I'm sure you wanted to be in the college realm and all of that and getting a job in that aspect. What did you do to kind of solidify yourself in that role?
Well, the B cam of the fall of my senior year, I think it was at Holt High School. At that time, Rochester's players were the demonstrators at the coaching clinic. So
Okay.
we were on the on-floor demonstrators, and so usually you'd have two or three or 5-on-5 drills going on. We'd be doing the drills. That year, Mike Garland, who was one of Coach Izzo's assistants, longtime assistant, had just been named head coach at Cleveland State. So he was entering
Mhm.
his first year as my senior year of college. In his segment, he was showing the coaches how he goes about doing an individual development workout, an IDW. And they only needed one player for that, and my coach sent me out there. So he put me through a workout, nearly an hour. I was sweating really bad in front of a couple thousand coaches, and I think well, I did well, and he was impressed because he came up to me after that and he said, "Hey, man," and this was Coach Garland. He's the greatest.
Yeah.
Still good friends with him today. But he said to me, kind of whispered it as I walked off the court, "Hey, I'm going to hire you one day." And that was the first time I met him. But he didn't know the kind of can of worms he opened that day. So I spent my senior year of college constantly trying to get in touch with him, writing him letters. Um, he had hired as his top assistant a guy named Rick Albro, who I know your dad knows, longtime
Mhm.
coach in Michigan, all levels, legend. Rick was his top assistant, and I had played against Rick's team at Aquinas the year before, so I knew who Coach Albro was, and there was a Michigan connection there, and I stayed in contact. I did have some other opportunities as well. I interviewed at Rutgers, Central Michigan had talked to me about joining their staff, but I kind of had a goal of mine to make it to the Division I level, and I wanted to be at that level. And again, um, Coach Garland gave me an opportunity, so I came on there as a graduate assistant his second year, right after I graduated from college. And he put me to work, man. That's one of the things working for Coach Izzo's coaches. They work. So I learned what it really took to make it at the college level, the kind of hours it requires, and just everything that goes on behind the scenes. It was an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I mean, being part of a support staff like right now, like seeing the amount of work that is put in like on a day-to-day basis, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like that graduate
Oh yeah.
assistant job, it is a real full-time job. You got to be in charge of laundry, you got to be in charge of film stuff, you're all over the place. So talk to me about like once you got that position and started working your way in the support staff, because you were also a dobo at Cleveland State, if I'm correct, also,
hmm
talk to me about those positions and how they helped you kind of learn all the ins and outs of just basketball.
Yeah. So my first year at Cleveland State, I was kind of the film guy or the video
Okay.
coordinator. At the mid-major level, I don't think they had a hired position for that, so they kind of just delegated that to their graduate level staff. And
Hmm.
I'm not really a technological guy, so it was a scary proposition for me. But fortunately, one of our coaches was on the staff then, Luke Brown. He was a video coordinator for Michigan State, so he's the smartest guy I've ever met. So he taught me how it kind of worked, and I will tell you, I've never watched more basketball film in my whole life. I mean, anybody that wants to learn the game and learn how to break it down should become a video coordinator. It's a thankless job. You're going to work all the hours of the night, but I will tell you, you will learn how to watch film,
Hmm.
and you'll watch so much basketball that the game becomes easier to understand and read. Now you have to keep up with it, so you don't become a savant, but it really helped me and appreciate, film breakdown work. And it helps me to this day. I mean, we do quite a bit of film work here at Sacred Heart. And I think, the way I look at film and the way I look for things goes back to my experience as kind of the video guy at Cleveland State. But, being a graduate assistant at mid-major level, you're going to do a lot of things. I mean, I was doing the video, I was getting practices and helping with travel. Probably my biggest job was we had a walk-on point guard who was kind of the scout team point guard during the
Yeah.
season, and he hurt his ankle in one of the practices. So they had known, that I had just graduated. I wasn't too far removed from my playing days, so they had me step in,
Mhm.
and I did pretty good in the scout work. So he lost his job to me when he came back from injury. He just kind of subbed in for other people. They kept me out, and I loved it. I mean, we go down and play North Carolina. I'm in the Dean Dome running practice as the point guard. And it was an unbelievable experience. I'll never forget. So you do a lot of things, really. I mean, whatever's asked of you, you do. That's kind of your job role is to say yes to whoever
Yeah.
asks you. So, helping with team camps, summer camps, great experience. And anybody that asks me to this day, hey, I want to get into college coaching. What advice do you have? Or can you help me? I kind of just sit them down and just say, hey, first, let me tell you, kind of how it works. Because I think
Yeah.
everybody sees the March Madness tournament. They think, geez, I want to be a part of that. But that's a process. And
Mhm.
there's steps you have to take. And there's a lot of things that go on that people don't see. So I'm glad to have seen it. And I'm also glad to not be involved with it anymore, to be honest with you, Jake.
That's fair. That's completely fair. I mean, it's a lot of work, and especially like those support staff jobs, like it's a thankless job. It really is,
Yeah.
and you got to put 100% effort, and I mean, be that guy. I love it right now. It's an awesome, awesome experience, especially coming off of a March Madness high like we had this year. But moving into the some other steps in your career. So right now, like just some of the steps I wrote down. You were a head coach at IMG. You were also to spend some time at Northwood as an assistant or recruiting director, and then you're head coach here at Sacred Heart. So those were three steps that I wrote down. What I wanted to center on though is moving from like a support staff role into a head coaching role. So once you got that job at IMG, talk to me about like what those steps were to kind of like start building your program, because I feel like the hardest thing for some coaches to do is to go from being an assistant where you're not talking, like on support staff, you're not talking, you're not coaching that much. Talk to me about like now it's your program, you know?
Yeah. So back then, IMG was just getting started. It was the basketball academy at IMG, and they've rebranded it now. It's this national brand, and they're huge, right? So
Yeah.
I was fortunate with the timing to be able to get there at an early stage. I actually got the job because one of my best friends is also a high school coach in Michigan, Jared Riddell. He took a job down there, and we had just got let go at Cleveland State. I had accepted a assistant's job at Tennessee Martin, and then he asked me to come down and visit him, and I fell in love with the place. I mean, you just have, it's right on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, in Florida,
Yeah.
and you got these professional guys coming in. There's professional athletes from all realms working out, and it's a really cool place. So I was like, yeah, of course I want to do this, and live and work with one of my good friends. So
Yeah.
um, but it started out I just working summer camps, and
Hmm.
those are daily camps, 8 in the morning to 8 p.m. And by the time the fall season came around, the two of us were kind of the main two coaches there, Jared and myself. And Jared had decided to take the prep school team, and then they gave me the varsity team. We knew
Okay.
one of the two of us was going to be in charge of, and I loved it because I knew I had the more talented players. I mean, I had guys that were ranked in the country. But your question about going to run your program, um, it was hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I think anybody that wants to be a head coach, go coach an AAU team right now, so that you have to come up with a practice plan, so that you have to come up with role definitions and how to talk to players about that. Game strategy. There was a lot that I didn't know, that I'm aware of now, that goes into planning for a game, planning for a practice, and developing a team at what while you're developing individuals. So there was a lot I had to learn on the fly. I had great
Mhm.
support staff. Mike Moreau was the director. He was a longtime basketball coach. He was great to help me. And then, of course, Jared was there as well. And then I got a guy named Vince Walden that came down, and he helped me run the high school program. He's now on Buzz Williams' staff at Texas A&M. So he's another guy that just great with kids, great basketball mind. So there was great people down there to help me, but there was a lot that I had to learn and get better at. But I will say for myself, because I was around a good high school coach, a good college coach, my dad was a coach, I kind of knew that, hey, I might not know how to drop a practice plan at a top level. I knew how to command a practice and how to get guys and to do things and how to teach them the game. So, a lot of what we had to do, I felt like I had the skills to be able to do that. But certainly, I mean, if I could go back to myself, almost 20 years ago and say, hey, this is what you didn't know, I would have been a much better coach for sure. So, but great experience. I met so many great coaches and got to hang out with, the coaches you read about. So it was very humbling for me.
For sure. For sure. All right. Well, we are actually going to take a quick little break, and then we'll be back with Coach Sherlock for more questions.
Welcome, everybody, to the Jomo Show, your home for Oakland sports and beyond from WXOU. My name is Giovanni Mosheri, and I am the host of the one and only show that covers the Oakland University Golden Grizzlies each and every week. Subscribe to the Jomo Show for weekly interviews with athletes and coaches, for a recap of the week's action at OU, and whatever else is going on in the sports world. You can tune in on 88.3 FM, WXOU, or wherever you get your podcasts each week. Go Golden Grizzlies on the Jomo Show.
Are you seeking connection, harmony, or a deeper sense of purpose? We believe spirituality is a universal language. Whether you find purpose in prayer, meditation, or simply connecting with nature, Merkaba is here to embrace your unique path. Merkaba, elevating consciousness through fashion. Visit Merkaba.shop or follow us on Instagram at Merkaba to explore our unique world of fashion and our all-new fragrance line handmade in Detroit, Michigan. Use code JAKESTAKES123 for 10% off any order. This exclusive offer only lasts for a limited time.
And we are now going to talk a little bit about recruiting. So, what I have written down here is you were the assistant coach slash recruiting director at Northwood University. So talk to me a little bit about how that position kind of came along in your coaching journey. And then talk to me a little bit about your philosophy of recruiting. A lot of people have kind of mixed opinions on like recruiting in general. Like some high school coaches decided to be in high school because they don't love recruiting, and some college coaches like really enjoy recruiting and get all into that. We had a great talk with Bobby Nobbert on part 3 talking about JUCO recruiting and how he goes about with his philosophy. So talk to me about your philosophies with recruiting and your time at Northwood University.
So I spent 3 years at Northwood University working for Bob Taylor, longtime college coach. Now he's coaching high school again, actually. Great coach. Maybe learned more basketball from Bob in terms of X's and O's than anybody. I mean, he just had an unbelievable basketball mind. So still does. And then, I was kind of tasked with, leading the recruiting efforts at Northwood. And, we had our work cut out for us. We were really trying to revamp our roster. We were trying to bring in some, what they call program changing kind of players. So a little bit more transfer oriented, junior college kind of guys coming in, junior, senior year, maybe from a bigger school, a mid-major or what have you. And that could really help us win more games. Right.
Yeah.
I think ultimately my philosophy with recruiting would be, get that high school player that comes from a successful program, was successful in high school and is a team guy, fits into your system well, shows, signs of unselfishness and sort of just wants to have team success. I think those are the, if you could have anybody, the kind of players, and obviously a good student. But I think sometimes, when you get on staffs or you get jobs, the college game is totally predicated around your success,
Hmm.
your win-loss record, and coaches react to that accordingly. Whether they're out there to survive and get their next contract or move up the ladder in their coaching ranks. So sometimes recruiting is also about getting the best players you possibly can to help you win games. Now,
Yeah.
so you have to kind of toe the line there. You want to get the best talent that you can, and then you also want to build a good system and a good program and have a great, cohesive team. So it's not an easy thing. I mean, I think
Hmm.
the challenge of college coaching is the recruiting. And especially these days, I'm not in it anymore, but I have friends that are doing it. And, with the transfer portal, and it's almost like you got to recruit the kids year after year, because any success that they might have, it might pull them away from you and give them a chance to play at a higher school. So they're always recruiting, and it was exhausting to recruit a kid to commit to your school and to have to get them all the time to recommit. I can't imagine the energy and the effort, but um, it is what it is. But I will tell you that if you can become a good recruiter, that's how you make it in college coaching. I mean, I think a lot of the coaches understand the game, know how to teach the game, and if they don't, there's people on the staff that can get them caught up to speed. But I think the ones that separate themselves at the college level are the recruiters. Those guys, they're the lifeblood. I mean, I'm in sales now. I work for a
Yeah.
sales company, and the sales reps are the lifeblood of the organization. And if you can bring in the talent, if you can bring in the guys that can help you make a good team and win games, you are going to do well in your career. So I knew that when I got it started back in college, back with Northwood. I said, if I can establish myself as a guy that's out there working. I wanted to be everywhere. I wanted to go to all the events. Um, and sometimes I would go to things that, would have players that maybe I didn't have a shot at, but I just wanted to learn how to evaluate talent, right? And
Yeah.
that's the other funny thing about recruiting is it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. You can talk to some coaches and they say, this guy, I'm not quite sure he's good enough to play at my level. And then you go down 2 seats and there's a guy in the same conference at the same level and he says, geez, I love him. I think he'd be great. And that happened to me a ton of times at Northwood, where we were kind of hesitant on a kid. All of a sudden, he's playing at a rival school and he gives you 20 points, and you just kick
Yeah.
yourself. Like, gosh, what did I miss? So it's an unsettled science. It comes, from the eye of the beholder. Everybody's trying to be the best at it, but there's mistakes that are made. I think everybody probably gets better the more they do it, but
Hmm.
the challenge of it as a competitive guy, as a guy that wanted to be good at evaluating talent. I did at the time. I loved it, and I didn't mind the work. It just and in fact, I wish to some extent, I wish you could recruit a little bit at high school. I get why there's no recruiting, and I'm not saying I'm a recruiter, but you want to be able to form your own team, right? I mean, I think the challenge with high school coaches is they get who they get, whoever's walking the halls of your school, and that's great.
Yeah.
We want to love our kids, but when you have the ability to bring in guys that you see as, a talent that can fit with what you want to do and how you want to play in your style, that's the fun part of the recruiting at college.
For sure. For sure. Um, like college recruiting, it's a crazy game. It's a crazy game. There's a junior college recruiting. There's you're going all over the place all the time. I mean, there's plenty of stories that I've heard with. I mean, Bobby told one on his podcast last time where right after Horizon League championship game, he's flying to Florida. Like right away to go recruit some kids. Is there any like recruiting story that stands out for you in your head?
Well, I would say there was a kid we had at IMG, played on the prep school team. He was a Maryland kid,
Okay.
left-handed point guard, and so he would have been, when I was at Northwood, he was a couple years out of high school, so he was a little bit older, and he was a junkyard dog kind of player, just scrappy, tough, really good defender, strong, and he was playing down in a academy prep school in Indiana.
Okay.
And I grabbed, at the time I worked with Mike Thomas, who's the head coach now at East Kentwood. I said, Mike, I'm telling you, you're going to love this kid. Let's go down and see him. It was south of Indianapolis, and it would have been probably 3 p.m. We go down, we get there 8:30, and they're playing. And we
Yeah.
probably watched them play till 9:30, and then we had to be back. At Division II, you don't fly anywhere, you drive. So we had
Yeah.
to be back because we had workouts the next morning at like 6 in the morning. And we knew this going in, like, hey, we got to go down. I know this kid. We're going to go watch him. I'll sign him right now. I want to make sure you're good. Um, and he loved them, but we got back at like 3 in the morning, and we got the windows down. We're trying to stay awake. So we rolled all the windows down. It's 2 in the morning. We're on the highway. Nobody's on the road but us, and we're blaring music because we just don't want to fall asleep at the wheel. We get
Yeah.
home, and 3 hours later, we're running a workout. So you have nights like that where you just can't even believe where you were 4 hours ago.
Yeah.
I think, you fly to Tulsa on the whim just to go see a JUCO exposure event, or you go to Las Vegas, and you just can't even. When you go to Las Vegas for that big AAU tournament, you can't even believe that they put that many teams in an area for that and that many games. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just the craziness of it and the heat. I mean, it's the middle of July. Um, but man, what an experience to sit around and some of the guys, I'm not going to name drop, but some of the guys you're sharing a bleacher with, you're just like, these are your guys you look up to your whole life. So that was a
Yeah.
great experience. But I think the daily grind, you get out of practice at 5, and then you got to go watch a game at 7 or 8, and then you got to get back home, and then maybe call a couple guys, and then you got to get up and do it the next day. I think over time, you start to realize, boy, this is a really big commitment. So, but I enjoyed it.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, crazy. Like it is interesting how you're in the sales field now. And I mean, you kind of have a similar like type thing. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, it helped me get my job. I showing them that I could draw up a play didn't really convince them I could sell. But when I explained the recruiting process and getting guys and parents to
Yeah,
believe in you, I think it is sales. I mean, the best, any good recruiter in any sport could be a good salesperson for sure.
for sure. For sure. That kind of leads into kind of where you are today. You're ended up at head coach at Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart. So talk to me about how that coaching job kind of happened and the time in between there.
Yeah. So when we were done at Northwood, my wife and I had been married just a few months, and she was pregnant with our first son, who's 13
Mhm.
now. And I probably could have stayed in the game and gotten some jobs wherever, but because I think I was the son of a college coach, because I'd had some years coaching at the college level and saw the commitment, I had decided I was going to put my family first and get out of the game,
Yeah.
which my wife appreciates, I know. And so I went a different route with my career and got into sales, which has been great for me. So for 10 years, Jake, I coached basketball a little bit. 1 year I coached an AAU team, and then, I did some individual workouts, but
Mhm.
most of it was just shooting in the driveway with my sons. And
Yeah.
it was great, and it's still great, and I'm still able to do it now, which is the beauty of high school coaching. But that was a choice for me that I made to kind of spend more time not on the recruiting road, but at home with the family. So for 10 years, I didn't have a coaching job, and I wasn't really sure if I'd ever get back into it. To be honest with you, I wasn't really too eager to get back into it. I will say, though, being a member of the Sacred Heart Parish in Mount Pleasant,
Mhm.
we had just enrolled our kids there. It was during the COVID pandemic, and I had known the previous coach, Pat Tyson, um, for many years. His brother had been his assistant the last couple of years, Andy. Andy's on
Yeah.
my staff now, and Andy gave me a call, and he said, "Hey, my brother's gonna step down. Would you be interested?" And I had a serious conversation with my wife, and I said, "Yeah, I think I'll put my hat in the ring." So, the rest has been history for me. I wasn't. I was kind of starting because my oldest son was starting to show some signs he wanted to play, and I thought, well, it'd be fun to coach and coach him or, get back into it. Because my kids didn't really know me, Jake, to be honest with you, as a basketball coach. I mean,
Yeah.
when they were born, I got back into coaching when my fourth son was born. So he'll remember me as that. But the other three, they spent the first half of their lives, I was not coaching basketball. We
Mm.
reminisce about, I have to show them pictures to prove it. But, I think it's been fun for the family. And I kind of looked at it. My wife and I looked at it like, well, this would be fun to kind of, show them this side of you. And, this is a great game that's meant a lot to my life. And to get them involved, so that's what we do. We bring the family to practices when we can, and they go to all the games, and they're our biggest fans, and our players are great with my sons, and my wife loves our players. So it's really been a family decision and a family experience for us, and I'm thankful for that because that's kind of why I got out of college coaching, was because I wanted my family for
Yeah.
me. And I'm not saying all college coaches don't appreciate their family. They of course do. But for me, I thought what's best for me is to just, not coach. But to get back into it and have them involved the way they are, I've been very fortunate.
I love that. I love that. I really think it's cool that you're able to now like be with your family and still be able to do it, which is cool. Like now you're back into it. You guys just had a great season making it to the state championship game. So talk to me about like your first, I believe it's 4 years with the team.
Yep.
Talk to me about those first 4 years and what they've been like for you.
Well, it's been great. My first year was during the COVID 2020-2021 season, where we had a shortened season. We delayed. I think I got hired in November. My first 2 months with the team was on Zoom. We finally started practice in February, and we played 3 games a week until the districts. We ended up going into the state semifinals, and
Yeah.
we lost to the state champions, Detroit Douglas.
Okay.
But I think, I was familiar with Sacred Heart, and I knew that they had a history of getting good players and having good players. A couple guys played at the college level. And then, to be at our Division IV, when you have talent, I mean, I was firmly aware that, you can win a lot of games. So I think what's been great for me is, to take over a very successful program and keep it going
Yeah.
has been the joy of it. I didn't have to come in there and rebuild it from the ground up. I mean, I kind of, we've done some different things, you make it your own, but it was already going. But I have made it my own, and we are rolling a little bit right now. But after that first year, I graduated 75% of my scoring output. So we did have to rebuild my second year, and we moved up some younger guys, and they had to kind of drink out of a fire hose for a season. But now they're seniors, and last year, when they were juniors, and then we had my first class now seniors.
Yeah.
We kind of knew our roster was really, really built to score. We got a transfer in. Brody Cherry, his dad, got an assistant's job at Central Michigan University with Coach Barbie, and he was a tremendous addition. I mean, I think he probably turned us into a possible regional contending team to a state contending team, just because he added another offensive threat and ball handling ability. So very fortunate with that. And that's kind of the nice mix, with Mount Pleasant High School and Sacred Heart. Sometimes we get coaches at CMU and their kids go to our school and they're probably pretty good athletes. And next thing you know, new kid shows up in town and, he's got some game and it's kind of a nice little thing there. So, but no, I mean, my second year, we took our lumps, and then, 2 years ago, you could see it. All right.
Yeah.
We win a district. We get to the regional final. We lost to a better team. Yes. But coming into last year, I could tell they were district champions. They were very close to a regional championship. We knew that we were going to have a tough game to get through the regionals with Saginaw-Novell. They were all seniors, and they had been announced the year before as juniors in the regional final to a very good Flint Beecher team. So we knew they were going to be tough, but we kind of had our eyes on them. And then once we got past them in the regionals, as I tell my team and I tell, most of my coaches, once you get to the quarters, all bets are off. I mean, you can
Yeah.
throw away the scouting reports. You got to show up and play, because you never know what's going to happen. Everybody's good at that point. So we felt pretty confident that we could make, an even deeper run once we got past Saginaw-Neville. Because I'd said from the beginning of the season, I thought Saginaw-Neville was probably a favorite to get to the Final Four. So
Yeah.
that's when I think I was willing to. You don't ever want to get too ahead of yourself with like predictions of how good your team will be. I think it's my job to be the biggest skeptic. Like,
Hmm.
prove it to me first. But once we beat them, I thought, geez, we might have a shot. We just knew we were going to have a tough one with Wyoming Tri-Unity Christian. We played them earlier in the year, and they spanked us.
Yeah.
They had a generational team. I mean, just unbelievable talent. Kids that went to the Final Four for 4 years. So we don't have any regrets. I think they would have beat us 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times. But to have the season we had, we broke the school record for wins, 26 wins.
Yeah.
They left a legacy. I'm proud to be a part of it. But I would tell, if people ask me the key to that season, it wasn't the players' talent, which we had. It wasn't the defensive capability, which we had. We were a good defensive team. What
Hmm.
made us that special was nobody cared who got the credit. I mean, our leading scorer was 13 points a game. Our second leading scorer was 12 and a half. Our third leading scorer was 11. And we had a guy at 9. I mean, any given day, somebody else leads you in scoring or rebounding. We had a committed team. They were committed to each other. And I, at Rochester, I was my senior year, we won a small college national title. Similar situation, maybe not the most talented team that ever went through there, but we all loved each other, played for each other, and didn't care who got the credit. Well, that's when you win.
Hmm.
And, I think we've done a good job at my time at Sacred Heart of convincing these guys that, basketball is the ultimate team sport. Nobody can win a game by themselves. You need everybody on the floor on defense committed to guarding and rebounding. And then when it comes to the offensive side, putting yourself and your team in a position to be the most successful. And they bought into that. And so I'm hoping, we lost 2 seniors, Luke Taylor and Aiden Halliday, which are going to be, big losses for us. But I'm hoping with these guys, another year of maturity, a couple younger guys coming up, that chemistry is my hope to be the backbone for us to have another great season.
For sure. For sure. Um, so I mean, unbelievable season that you guys had. And I was blessed enough last year to be able to come to a practice a few times and be able to take some notes and, take some mental notes and learn as much as I can. One thing I was really impressed with how you run your program was, I mean, just your huddle. AJ comes home with the huddle all the time and is really like locked in on scouts and like understanding what exactly, it takes to get ready for an opponent. So we talked about your support staff time, and that's a lot what the support staff does is talking about scouting and things of that nature. But how do you go about scouting in high school? Because I feel like that's something with high school coaches that it's tough to do because there's not really like a synergy or something like that where you have access to all the film. But how do you do it with your high school team?
So another fortunate thing that happened when I got back in was, with the COVID pandemic, the NFHS network started.
Yeah.
And that allows us to stream or even go back and watch teams that are upcoming, their games, most recent games usually, which has really helped high school scouting because before that, you have to send out your assistants or yourself or friends of the program to go watch teams live, and they would come home with notes and you do your best to decipher. But to be able to watch at least on film games, again, this goes back to my time as a college coach, breaking down opponents' games, watching games, showing your team the games. That's a big thing to me. I saw how effective it was in the college game. And
Yeah.
I believe in it. When you can show players their actions, when you can give them visuals of what they look like and how they play, their tendencies. We kind of break scouting down into a couple of areas. Number one is, you take their top 5, 6, 7 players. And what are each one of those players' strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies? What do they typically want to do when they have the ball, when they don't have the ball? so that the player you can keep it simple for them, right? This isn't they have a lot of things going on in their life and they're young people, so they can't digest a ton of information. But what you can give them is like basic synopsis of what you need to be worried about if you get matched up against this person, okay?
Mhm.
And then we try to break it down into, team oriented stuff. What do they try to do on offense in the half court? All right, who are they looking to get shots? What kind of sets do they run? What kind of offenses are they going after? And then defensively, how do they play on defense? Are they a full court defensive team? Do they switch? Are they trapping? Things like that. Are they zone team? We see a lot of zone, and you can practice zone a lot, but when you can show them, how zones are rotating for each and every opponent,
Yeah.
it helps guys anticipate when they're out there where the ball needs to go and what they should be expecting. So we're big on film. I wish I could have my guys in film more than I do. But like I said, I think as a coach, you have to balance. It's not just all about what we want with these guys. They've got families, they've got schoolwork, they've got, school activities. You got to make sure you have a balance there. You have basketball time, but let's make sure we don't bleed into the other activity time. So we do the best we can with the time we have. But you mentioned my staff. So your brother AJ's been with me 3 years. Andy Tyson's been with me 4 years. Ryan Green's been with me 4 years. I've added Zach Wentworth, who is a starter, one of my best players on my first-year team that went to the semifinals. He's going to be a former player helping out this year. So I've got 3 or 4 guys that have been with me. They know what we're doing. We're all on the same page. And the way I do it is, if we have 2 or 3 games coming up, I'll give an assistant this opponent. I'll give another assistant this opponent. That way they can focus on that opponent. And when it comes to preparing for that team, they kind of lead the charge along with me. And if anybody else sees something, hey, here's what we're going to focus on. Here's what we're going to do in practice. So that helps organize it, I would say for sure.
For sure. For sure. I mean, we talked about just the unbelievable success that last year brought to your program. So, I mean, talk to me about the next couple of years. What are some expectations that you have for yourself going into them? I mean, unbelievable success, but these next couple of years, like, are you expecting the same thing, or are you expecting just constant improvement? What do you got for me for your expectations?
So I would say it's a great question. I think every coach that's coaching high school in America should have a goal to win a state championship. That should be your
Okay.
goal, because that
Love
should drive what you do every day, throughout the year. But it's not the case that I'm expecting us, every year to get to where we went last year. That's my goal. But what I'm trying to do every day is just get better. I mean, we look at individual players on the team that are coming back. Okay, here's where you were at last year. Here's where you need to get. How can we do that? I think it kind of is a natural progression that when you get guys that can develop as players, and they can get better, well, your team should get better, or you should not drop off much. So I think for us in the fall and the summer, we're focused on individual improvement. And then I think as we get more towards the end of the fall and in the early practice season, we're trying to build that improvement into a team and go out and try to accomplish our mission. But, we break it down step by step as a process, right? I mean, yes, you want to get to the state championship game every year. But that's not going to be our focus until it's, appropriate.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do the things that we need to do in August, September, October, November, in terms of improvement and team building and chemistry, we won't have a shot, even if you're a talented team. I mean, there's many talented teams in high school and college that should make it that far that don't. And oftentimes what keeps them from that is, not building the team properly, not, the unselfishness, the character of the team. Scott Cherry just spoke to my summer camp. Like I said, his son plays for me now. He was on the 93 national championship team in North Carolina that beat the Fab Five team with Chris Webber.
Yeah.
And he talked about that experience. And he said, by far and away, Michigan was the most talented team. They might have been the most talented team in the 20 years since. You
Hmm.
know, all the NBA talent, the lottery picks, but he said we were the better team. You
Yeah,
know, I think they had the better players, we had the better team. And that is my message to any team sport coach. You can lose, you can beat teams with better players. You have to have talent, yes, but you also have to have a great chemistry, a great belief, and just unselfishness. And so that's what we kind of work on. But I would be lying to you if I said, you know, we don't expect to have successful seasons every year at Sacred Heart. I mean, it's kind of comes with the territory. You know, yes, there's a baseline you're trying to get to, but to be special like that, that requires a lot of time working on it in the months leading up to the start of the season. So time will see. You know, we're gonna do our best and we're gonna get after it. I have no doubt we have the kids to do it because they're unselfish kids and they've already proven that they're willing to do it. So I'm excited to get back at it.
for sure. For sure. All right. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining the podcast. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Jake. I'm glad you're doing this. You know, you're a student of the game. That's how you become a good coach. Never stop learning. You know, even when you get old like me, it's amazing. I meet young coaches that have seen things or have been exposed to things that I haven't, like your brother. I learned more from your brother than probably I could ever teach him. So you got to have the mindset of, you know, being open to learning new things. The game's evolving. Kids are different. You just don't get rested on your laurels. Just keep staying hungry and wanting to learn, and you're going to become even better.
Well, I appreciate it, Coach. And that is going to wrap up the show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, wherever you're at. Go like, subscribe on YouTube, go follow the channel on Spotify. Do what you got to do to help out the show. And that's going to wrap it up for today. I will see you guys next time. Peace.